All right. So, without further ado, welcome to everyone. This is a new financial year and first webinar, so to speak. So, really grateful for everyone who have taken out their time and come here. Just a little bit, I'm Vaishali. I'm a senior consultant at Atma. And as you all know, Atma is an accelerator that supports NGOs to become bigger, better, and stronger. And we do that through capacity building and through creating systems and processes. And we essentially aim to solve organizational development issues. We started in 2007 and since I've supported several organizations in this journey of excellence, and so grateful to see many of them here today. The Atma webinars was started in 2016, where we wanted speakers to come and share their practical experiences and knowledge that we knew that our NGOs were struggling with, right? And our aim with webinars is to have an open space where we can take up these issues that concern our sector as a whole and helps us improve our work. And as you know, we have like several different OD areas that we cover, like fundraising, communications, finance, and you can find all of our previous webinars on our YouTube channel. Please do subscribe to it and go through the playlists that are there. And as always, we're looking forward to hearing suggestions from you. So please do write to us. There's also a feedback form at the end of this webinar. So you can write there as well, or you can reach out to me anytime. And I just want to, before we get into the webinar, I just want to call out one of our most fantastic resources that we've come up with, which is the intermediary database. I'm putting a link to the chat for those who've not seen it. And it is a verified database for very many different functions that is there that we often need help with. So these are all professional, either organizations or individuals who offer those services. We invite you to explore the list, send us feedbacks and suggestions, or even additions to it. So yeah, I hope that helps. Great. So coming on to today's topic, I know that all of us here do struggle quite a bit, sometimes with individual productivity, organizations. I know I do. And as NGOs, we're so used to working in like a resource crunch, right? So we assume that this is how our life is going to be. It's going to be stretched thin, and we're going to be fighting for time and resources all the time. But can we do something to improve it? And speaking to Tejas, uh, he has some fantastic insights. He comes with a lot of experience. So that's why he's here today. I will just speak a little bit about Tejas. And so Tejas is the founder of Equist. He has 16 years of experience, more than 16 years of experience across both corporate and development sectors, where he's worked at Tech Mahindra, Dasra, Sattva Consulting, and Cognizant. Equist provides group coaching to organizations to enhance individual and team productivity. He holds a BE in computer engineering and has an MBA from the Indian School of Business. He is a husband of 7-year-old and former national level sailor and guitarist. And no wonder, with so many hats, I'm sure he has cracked the code on productivity. So yes, just a request to all the audience members that you can share your questions in the chat box as and when, and we'll make sure to get them answered throughout the webinar, and we'll also have a dedicated time towards the end. But once you put it in the chat box, it's easier for us to club the questions and ask them together. Also, ज़्यादातर इंग्लिश में ही बात होगी वेबिनार में, क्योंकि बहुत सारे अलग-अलग जगह से लोग जुड़ते हैं। बट आत्मा की टीम में इंग्लिश एंड हिंदी एंड इवन मराठी वी आर कंफर्टेबल विद। सो प्लीज़ आप लोग जिस भी भाषा में आप कंफर्टेबल हैं, यू कैन आस्क क्वेश्चंस इन दैट। आप उसमें सवाल पूछ सकते हैं। और चैट बॉक्स में अगर आपको कोई भी पर्टिकुलर पॉइंट की हिंदी एक्सप्लेनेशन चाहिए, तो आत्मा की टीम और मैं हैं, हम लोग पूरी कोशिश करेंगे कि चैट बॉक्स में हम आपको हिंदी में भी पैरेलली समझा सके। एंड तेजस, रिक्वेस्ट टू यू, आप जहाँ हो सके इंटरस्पर्स इट विद हिंदी। हम लोग बहुत ज़्यादा फॉर्मल नहीं होते हैं वेबिनार्स में, बिकॉज वी वांट अ लॉट ऑफ डिस्कशन। जितनी ज़्यादा बात हो, जितने ज़्यादा सवाल हो, उतना और मज़ा आएगा। So yes, that is all that I had to say. Tejas, please take it away.
No, thanks so much, Vaishali, for that, for setting the context. Firstly, very grateful to the Atma team for inviting me here. They've put in a lot of effort behind the scenes to make this happen. So really grateful to you and obviously Aishwarya and Sneha also originally. So thank you so much to all of you for bringing me here and giving the opportunity to speak to such lovely people. So without further ado, I will start with the session. I'm just going to start sharing. Okay, so we are talking about organizational productivity today. Why it matters and how to boost it, right? And that's really the theme of what we're going to cover today. Before I just do that, I'll just do a quick. I've done, there's Vaishali already done a quick introduction, so I'll skip the technical part. But just one thing which I want to share from my own personal experience is the part at the bottom, where I call myself the most unproductive person I used to know. So every kind of productivity challenge, whether it's not being able to focus, always feeling overloaded, not having good habits, not sleeping. You can name it, and I've kind of faced it. The only thing that's worked, is that each of these problems have actually worked one by one in terms of finding solutions. And over the time that I spent over the last 7 years, I realized that there are many other people who are just like me, who are struggling with productivity, who also want to know how to get more productive. I don't claim to be a guru or an expert in productivity. I'm just I'm just learning about productivity, and I have my own productivity challenges, which I also go through, and I use these solutions to sort of help me as well and my clients. Just one very quick thing about my organization, is that Equist, is the name of my organization. The real mission of Equist is to empower individuals and teams to achieve greater equilibrium. So a lot of us are feeling burnt out, or feeling stressed, or we've got a lot of things going on. How do you feel more at ease? How do you feel more in a state of equilibrium? That's what I'm trying to do. That's what Equist is trying to do, really. Equist is really a play on words of equilibrium specialist. And productivity is actually a way to help people become more productive. So that's why I talk about productivity. We cover knowledge, tools, and ideas that actually help people achieve a greater sense of calm, a greater sense of equilibrium. I work with organizations in three ways. I do introductory sessions, which are like 2 hour, kind of sessions. I'm working with both non-profit and for-profit organizations. I do workshops, which are, in-person, half-day, a full-day kind of sessions on productivity. And I do cohorts where we take a group of 10 to 15 highly talented people, and we expose them to 6 weeks of training, and we really measure outcomes at the end to see have they been able to improve their productivity in that short period. So these are the three ways I kind of engage with organizations. So the agenda for today, we're going to talk about setting the context of why are we even talking about productivity, right? All of you feel it, but I just want to still make that point a little bit, if you'll allow me, in terms of why is productivity important. What we're going to do is then we're going to actually define productivity and explore what are the key areas of productivity that we as people, as individuals, as team members should explore towards greater productivity. We'll talk about some steps towards what that you can take within your organization. I'm going to leave you with a few high impact solutions, and we leave space for questions. Yeah, does that sound good? You can just give me a thumbs up if that sounds good, just so that I know you're following along as well. Cool, awesome. Okay, so we're going to start with the reflection. I'm just going to do a mental poll. You can just go to this Menti link. I'm just going to try to put the link in the. Yeah, maybe you can. Sorry. Put the link in the chat.
Able to put the
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so you can just put this. You can go to that link and then just vote for. Just mention what the response to what would you do with 26 hours, right? Imagine you had 26 hours. You had 2 more hours in the in the day, what would you do with those 2 extra hours? Yeah. I love sleep. Clearly, there are a few sleep deprived folks here. Sleep is so critical, absolutely. Reading, yeah, I think learning, reading is something that, people talk about a lot. Um, Rest and relax, meditate. Um, yeah, spend time with myself. Yeah. So I think we've a lot of great ideas, time with family, time for art, time for my hobbies, read and write, self-realization, gratitude to people who helped me, take stock and plan for tomorrow, absolutely, learn a new language. Uh, a lot of the responses are, if I were to broadly, sort of categorize them, they're either, getting more rest, or learning, or, finding time for your hobbies. But either way, you look at it, a lot of it is, on self-care and self exploration, self-learning. So really investing in yourself in some way or the other. So it's good to keep in mind, whatever you've written down. Okay, this is very interesting. Learning creative pursuits, quality time, absolutely. Uh, really interesting ideas. If anybody wants to share, also they can feel free to unmute and also share. Uh, if there's anybody wants to share quickly what they thought, what they would do with the 2 hours. You can spend time with family. Yeah. So again, let's just keep it informal. Feel free to unmute and share.
Um,
Yeah.
Human beings will never be satisfied with any extra hours that we get, whether
Yeah.
it is 26 hours or 64 hours.
No, yeah, that's a much deeper point, Dr. Ratna, absolutely, and valid as well. I think the main realization from this is why this is so powerful a question. It just helps you realize what is it that you wanted to get done more in the day, right? So the clue in this for yourselves is, these are things which you want to figure out a way to do, right away. And can you do it in some extent at least, right? So, like for example, some people, who are saying, for example, they want to rest, relax, they want to read a good book. Can you at least spend 15 minutes doing that, right? You may not get that 1 hour, that half an hour period. Some of us want to spend more time with family. Can we spend more time? Can we spend 15 minutes more than we do today? Right? Like, I think it's about how do you make those small changes in our lives, that make us more productive. Uh, Perfect. No, thanks. So just keep this in mind. I think it's also useful for you, just as you reflect to capture these reflections so that you can come back to it at a later point of time. Great. Great. Continuing with the session. Sorry. Okay. So there was a survey which was done, which is okay. So there's a next poll which I'm going to do. You can look at the same Menti link. There's a survey question that I'm going to ask you all. So there's, according to a survey, done by Microsoft of Indian employees, what percentage of people in India report having insufficient focus time in a day? So you can use the same Menti link to answer. Is it 19%? Is it 38%? Is it 58%, 68%, or 78%? What do you think in terms of the number of people? Okay. Interesting. So I think the vast majority, if you are saying 68%, the answer is actually 78%. So a significant number of people are, 78% of people are actually saying that they don't have enough focus time in a day. You can see the extent of the problem. If you felt, this is a problem that only you are facing, but you can take a little bit of comfort in the fact that there are a lot of people who are also in the same boat in terms of facing these kind of challenges of not being able to focus enough in a day. If you look at, the survey further, one part of it is 78% of, Indian employees saying they don't have enough focus time in a day. The second is really that 76% of employees actually lack time and energy to get work done. And another 41% and 41% feel like lack of work-life separation negatively impacting them. So you can see this problem is very prevalent. And it's quite a large challenge right now. So a lot of our workforce is facing, both in the for-profit and the non-profit sector are facing, significant challenges. And in fact, we thank you firstly to all of you for submitting the survey. From there we got a few of the challenges. The largest individual productivity challenge that we got from all of you was this feeling of overwhelm, right? This feeling that there are too many tasks, there's too much unplanned work. There's too much happening, right? There's too much dynamism. And these are some quotes, right? I'm managing multiple tasks at the same time, which reduces productivity. I'm taking on too much at once. I need to do better task prioritization. I have lack of focus. I keep getting distracted because of multiple tasks. I'm making time for certain, having to keep making time for certain or unplanned tasks. So that means, you have those plans, but they go off when you actually get to it. I'm constantly juggling between multiple tasks across verticals because we are extremely understaffed, right? A lot of nonprofits have that challenge of having to be understaffed and still get a lot of work done. So that was a real key top individual challenge, was a sense of overwhelm, the sense of too many tasks happening, the sense of unplanned work. On the team productivity side, so that is the individual productivity side. On the team productivity side, we have lack of proper performance measures or tracking, right? It was very interesting because I was not expecting this result, but a lot of you said, hey, we don't have a way to even measure productivity, right? So there is there was a quote that somebody said, which is, there's no process in place to track productivity. Ideally, we should set up targets for the group, then convert them into individual goals. Group and individual alignment can be better. We should understand where we're spending most of our time and balance time between meeting and personal work time. We're losing track of monthly goals and getting stuck with daily tasks, and we're finding it difficult to adhere to set OKRs. So there are two things which you can say broadly from the team productivity. One is direction, right? We don't have those clear targets defined, which we're heading towards, and if they are defined, then we're struggling to actually measure to see whether we're moving that direction, and we're often taking on ad hoc work, right? So this is, thanks for these. We're going to come back to some solutions that can address these. If I don't, feel free to ask questions as well. So we're going to start with defining productivity. I'm going to give you a definition, which is the standard definition from, like industrial from an industrial sense. I want to hear from you, what is the thing that's missing? So this is the definition. A measure of economic performance. So productivity is really defined as a measure of economic performance that compares the amount of goods and services produced, which is the output, to the amount of inputs used to produce those goods, which is the input, right? So what do you feel is missing? I'd love to, feel free to raise your hand and unmute and speak. Would love to get your thoughts as well. You can even put it in chat. Just want to know what you feel could be added to this when you look at productivity in your own context. Parag.
In our sector,
Parag, sorry, I'm not able to hear you. I don't know if it's just me.
No, not able to hear you, Parag.
This is Vibhu speaking. I think apart from this economic performance, I think in our sector particularly, I mean in the social and development sector, I think the learning, I mean learning in certain positions, particularly both in terms of thematic or technical learning, or learning in terms of organization development, is also I think included in a kind of productivity, because ultimately the learning and learning will be used in the next level of productivity.
Got it. So you're saying learning, if one way you can say of enhancing the definition is if you include learning in that and as an input. Okay. Yeah. Revati?
So one more thing, I think this economic thing is one aspect.
Yeah.
The other aspect is that the work has to happen, right?
Yeah.
So that if it is not happening, then we are also not being productive is one of the problems we face.
Got it. So Revati, do you mean like in terms of timelines? Is that what you
Yeah.
mean? Okay. Got it. So time is important, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
in the end, you being productive, but on the wrong timelines, absolutely. Yeah. That's interesting.
Productivity also means that you move from one stage to the another stage where you get a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction that something happened instead of not moving.
No, that's very interesting. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? That's very interesting.
Not exactly that you achieve that certain productivity at one point of time, but you are taking one step ahead towards your goal. That itself is a productivity.
No, interesting, because there's some activities, I guess, which the end is very far in sight, but as long as you're able to feel like you're moving in the right direction, you can call that productive. Would that be fair? Is that a correct summary?
Can I add?
Please.
I would add two words or maybe a couple of words into the definition, which says that a measure of economic performance that compares the efficient use, because efficiency is very important, just not overusing or losing resources. And the words which are missing also is that besides, of course, contribution to GDP, etc., is improving living standards. At the end, there has to be a improvement in living standards. So what's the social welfare, right? The economics is fine, but what about the social part?
No, very interesting. So I think you're bringing the angle that there is more than economic benefit. There are other aspects like the social welfare that we have to think about. Yeah. Absolutely. Anyone else? Very interesting points. These are in fact very, very thought-provoking, inputs. I have a little more of a more general definition of productivity, which I will reveal right after this.
So to me, it sounds very linear as a measure, economic performance. Somebody also added, there's a sense of well-being also, so standard of living, somebody shared standard of living. So it's also about the standard of life. How are you, improving yourself and what are you learning in the whole process? Economics is just one part of it.
Yeah, I think would it be fair to say, this feeling, right, Jay? Like, I mean, I think feeling is missing in all of this, right? It's very, very like output to input, very mechanical. But yeah, no, absolutely. Perfect. No, this is great. Thank you, folks. These are really interesting thoughts. I'll just check if there are any. Productivity also means quality and efficiency within timeline. Yeah, time frame, exactly. So I think the way I look at productivity and you can use it across contexts is, firstly looking at what have you selected, right? If you're let's say efficient, right? Because the current definition which we saw was about efficiency, which is you produce more output with lesser input. But the problem is, are you working on the right thing, right? Like that's the priority, aspect, which is critical. Somebody said, like working step by step towards a definite goal. Are you taking the right steps? Are you working on the right step? That is the first, thing. So what are your priority that you've taken? How well something was, executed. I think there was, Ujjwala spoke about quality, how much time it takes, which is about efficiency. And with that comes timeline, right? I think and one thing which is really missing and which Jaya brought up was the impact on your emotional state, the feeling, the mindset, right? Like, because a lot of times you may be productive, you may be working on the right thing, but if you're not feeling, the feeling tells you a lot, gives you a lot of clues about whether you are actually being productive or not. So really those four things only increase your likelihood of achieving desired positive outcomes. it's not guaranteed that, it may be that you're working the right thing, working the right way, doing it in time. And let's say you feel very good about it, but you may not achieve those positive outcomes, right? You may be working on a fundraising proposal, for example, for a donor, and you may realize that at the end of it, you may not have won the deal, but what you can control is, the other four aspects of productivity, right? Make sense? Does this resonate with all of you? And again, there's no standard definition of productivity. This is my, my own interpretation. What I just want everybody to do is just spend a couple of minutes, just write down your own definition, right? You heard some great ideas, some great thoughts from other people as well. Write down what is your definition of productivity. And the reason it's so important is, anytime you want to ask yourself, am I being productive or not? You can come back to this definition. Yeah. So we'll just take a couple of minutes. You can write down that definition and we can resume. Just put done in the chat once you've written out your definition. And feel free to share your definition also. Would love to hear from you. Interesting. So Sneha is saying, that productivity is when I feel like I've used my potential to the fullest. Yeah. Sneha, do you want to elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
This is Sneha and Arpita from ECO. So, yeah, I feel like I've done something productive in a day when I feel like whatever I'm capable of, I'm doing that to the fullest rather than, doing something just for the sake of doing it.
Got it. So are you working to the best of your potential is the way you look at productivity, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Vikas is saying.
May I?
Yeah, sorry. Who's
This is Bibu.
Hi, Bibu.
Yeah. Bibu. Yeah. I think that this is I think as you said, it is a measurement of economic, social, and emotional performance in a very cost-efficient manner within a specified timeline. I think this is my definition of being productive.
Very interesting, people. I guess so. The question, when you can always go back to this and say, hey, is it meeting these elements? And if not, then maybe I need to do something differently, right? So that's interesting. Thanks, Bill. Vikas is saying, I think productivity is completing tasks with deadline, but with more quality. Yeah, quality is so key. Productivity means to, Dr. Nilesh, productivity means to the measure of efficiency in converting inputs outputs. Achieving more with less can be applied across contexts. Okay. Yeah. So just one thought, Dr. Nilesh, maybe just think of something that is a short definition, because the question becomes, how do you actually go back to validate, whether the productivity definition works for you? I think some great points. It's just about how do you, kind of think about productivity as something that you can test,
Yes, sir.
Okay. Muskan says, Shambhavi, says productivity is about optimizing the resources and reaching the desired goal with economic and emotional satisfaction. So she brings in both economic and emotional aspects. In terms of effort, Aarti says, I feel output in terms of effort, money, emotion. Absolutely. Yeah, some great thoughts. And hopefully do look at the chat and see whether, any of these thoughts can help you improve your own definition of productivity, right? this can be very powerful because you can keep coming back to it to see, you know, how do you measure productivity for yourself, right? And in your interaction. Great. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to move on in the interest of time. Some really great thoughts from all of you. Just okay, so we're going to look at, you know, there's a very interesting, you know, there's an interesting video from on organizational productivity by a person called Michael Mankins, who's from Bain and Capital, Bain and Company, sorry, this is a mistake, who talks about, you know, what are the key elements of organizational productivity. So you can relate it quite well to the nonprofit as well. Parul is saying, you know, please share these chats with us. Okay, absolutely. Thanks, Parul. Cool.
Let's talk about the main findings out of that book. You're telling me this is a book that you launched a year ago. So let's just pick, if you like, the main themes that you picked up that companies should be aware of when dealing with this.
Sure. We wanted to take a look at what was driving workforce productivity, essentially white-collar productivity, and what the impact was on improved workplace productivity and financial performance.
Right.
And what we found in our research is that the best companies, that is the average of the top quartile of the sample of companies, were 40% more productive than the rest, the average of the remaining three quartiles, as a result of the way they manage the time, talent, and energy of their workforce.
Right.
Stated differently, you would say that the best accomplished as much by about 10 o'clock in the morning on Thursday as the rest do all week. Right, and these people keep producing, they keep innovating, they keep coming up with great ideas, they keep executing the great ideas they've already come up with. So over time, that differential becomes an overwhelming source of competitive advantage for these companies.
Michael, are you suggesting that we should be working 2-hour days?
No, I'm suggesting that if you could eliminate all of the factors that get in the way of you working productively and the time that you're at the office, if you were put in a role that was best suited for the talent that you have, and if you could be engaged and inspired in your work, that you get a lot more done.
Sure.
And you might get as much done in by 10 o'clock in the morning on Thursday as your colleagues working at other places accomplish all week.
Yeah. Your report says in terms of that time that we're talking about, your average company loses 25% of its productive power to organizational drag. Just explain what that is.
Yeah, sure. If you think about it, if you could dedicate 100% of your hours at work to productive activity, how much you'd be able to accomplish.
Absolutely much more.
But the problem is that stuff gets in the way. That stuff usually manifests itself in the form of unnecessary meetings that don't actually go anywhere, lots of time processing e-communications that's unnecessary. And our work uncovered that of that, almost 24% of productive capacity is lost essentially to bureaucratic processes, procedures, unnecessary reporting, and complex structures that require more interactions than should be required to get work done. And so you spend all this time in meetings, all this time processing e-communications in order to attempt to get work done inside prescribed processes, and at the back end, nothing really comes about it. So if you could eliminate all of that, you'd have more productivity each week, about almost more than a full business day for most companies.
I wish we had our HR manager here listening to you. Let's talk about talent and what you found. You say here, contrary to popular belief, top performing companies don't have better talent than their competitors. They are better at deploying, teaming, and leading the talent that they have. And when I read that line, I thought to myself, what are you saying? Are you saying people don't matter? It's more about how you manage them?
No, I'm not saying that. But there's a common misperception. I even had this misperception, by the way, that what explains the difference in performance between the best and the rest was just the mix of star talent. That the reason why these companies outperform these companies is their people are just better. And it turns out on an average to average basis, the mix of people is basically the same in the two groups. What's very different is the way star talent or top performing talent is deployed, meaning what job they're put in, what teams they're put on and who's on those teams, and how they're led and who their leaders are. And so if you think that you can't get the pool of talent that Facebook can, and therefore you'll never be a great performer, my advice to you is worry less about what the mix of talent is that you have, and identify who your great people are now, and make sure they're in the right jobs, that they're on the right teams, and that they're led by the right people.
1 minute, Michael, for you to explain to me the energy aspect of this.
Yeah, so I was a skeptic on energy, but it turns out that an engaged worker is 45% more productive than a merely satisfied worker. And an inspired worker is 55% more productive than a merely engaged employee. So what that means is that an inspired employee is 125% as productive as a merely satisfied employee. Stated differently, one inspired employee can accomplish the same amount as one satisfied employee in less than half the time.
And then the question becomes, the trick is, how do you make them engaged,
inspired? Engaged and inspired is mostly leadership. That in our research, the companies that had the highest number of engaged and inspired workers were those that recognized that inspirational leadership is something that needs to be developed in all managers, rewarded, and in some instances there even needs to be consequences associated with being an uninspiring leader, either taken out of leadership or taken out of the company.
Was that helpful? Just to give you a little bit of sense, just to summarize, what he spoke about, it was really about time, talent, and energy. These were three elements that he spoke about. A lot of us are spending a lot of our time, in bureaucratic processes, in getting approvals, which may not be required, in setting up meetings, that may not be really helpful and productive. So how do you actually look at time as one of the first aspects that you can improve? Talent, which was the most shocking thing for me. I used to believe that just as the speaker did, that the best organizations tend to have better talent, but often it seems that more than the talent itself, it's the way they deploy their talent. So the question becomes, what are the one thing which question to all of you can be, what is that one core part of your work, of your non-profit work that is going to add the most amount of impact to the organization and to the community at large. Just thinking through that can add a lot of sort of focus. And then, do you have the right people in those roles? Do you have your best people on those roles which are adding the most value to community? And the third is, when energy was surprising. If you're finding people who are not motivated, that's a big challenge. So figuring out how to actually motivate people, getting them engaged and inspired again, is one of the key things, because that can really boost your productivity as well. Exactly. Muralidhar is saying ultimately lead to an organization which has inspirational leadership among employees as well. Absolutely. Yeah. So I hope this is helpful. It's a great framework. I'm going to give you in the post session as one of the. I'm going to share a link to this first chapter of this book, Time, Talent, and Energy. It's available online for free. You can go through it. It has also an assessment to help you think through time, talent, and energy. And help you reflect on which part of your organization do you really need to focus on. Yeah, so I'll share that in the notes which follow after this webinar. Any questions following so far? You can just give me a thumbs up if following along.
I just would like to add one,
please.
development which is now happening.
Yes.
Is that the hierarchical structure? We've been having historically developing the type of organizational structures in organizations, like the matrix and the vertical, the horizontal, etc. A recent case study which has become very important and now is being used in China, is now being driven across many organizations, including e-commerce, IT, and with AI coming in a very big way, is holocracy, the Rendai method, where hire, uses what you call certain circular sort of team fields, and then connects supporting teams to the core activities, rather than having, drawing boxes and who reports to whom, and then etc. So pretty much an expansion or modernization of the flat structure. And there is one example of an organization called Budzog, because I learned this because in my coaching, is that they have 7,500 nurses and they don't have a single manager. So I think,
Amazing.
the environment, the culture and way the things are structured also ensures how much of energy is drained, because time energy actually can upset talent too, correct?
No, absolutely, exactly. It can frustrate talent. I'm sure we all have examples of, where a great talent is waiting for, having to go through these bureaucratic processes to get work done. Absolutely, absolutely. No, great. If in fact, Santosh, if you have any links,
yeah, sure.
You do feel free. We can include it in our post notes as well.
Okay, sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, $1 million question from Revati, saying who is an engaged employee and who is an inspired employee. I think it's a tough question to answer without an actual context. But I think one is you can just ask them, like, how inspired do you feel? Often you get the answer directly from them, right? Like you can see it in the way they engage. You can see it in the proactiveness that they bring in to meetings, to ideating, to executing. So the energy aspect tells you a lot in terms of the difference between an inspired and an engaged employee, and a disengaged employee, which is on the other spectrum altogether. So I think I can I can share more specifics around this in the post note, but those are some ideas which I thought I'll share. Revati?
Yeah.
Was that helpful?
Yes, thank you. Most of the time, it's easy to know the disengaged employee.
Yeah.
Within the rest, only to find the engaged and inspired. That is the tougher part.
Yeah, I think one of the things I found, Revati, is are they thinking about things the way you are thinking about things, right? Like, I mean, in a sense that do they carry the same passion? Are they thinking about this as their organization? I think can be the difference between an inspired and an engaged employee. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, it resonates, but I also been thinking that it's wrong to expect that from your employees because you're the founder and...
Correct.
So, thank you. It was helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think, there it's about the cause more than the organization sometimes, right? It may be the founder's role to be inspired about the organization and where the organization is going, but definitely the cause is what we all share in common. So, but I think it's a great question. I think I'm going to come back with an answer, more specific answer to this. Devi Datta, when we make them feel the contribution matters is making a difference. Absolutely, I think that adds so much, to the whole sort of energy levels in the organization as well. Okay. Coming back to so I think you heard something in the clip which spoke about the productive organizations that are around 40% more productive than the unproductive ones. I just wanted to share something very which I found interesting over here. You can see this is the productive capacity, which shows that organizations lose something like 24 points to organizational drag, which is all those procedures that in terms of meetings and emails and stuff that the speaker was talking about. Talent, they only see a boost, and this is the organizations in the bottom 3 quartiles performing organizations. They see only a little bit of an increase because of good talent, right? From if you start at a productive capacity of plus 100, and energy, you see an increase of plus 22. That shows you the powerful aspect of energy, and even the bottom quartile organizations have strong energy. What you'll find very interesting is the biggest difference between productive and less productive organizations is in the form of talent. You'll see there's a difference of plus 4 and 20, plus 29 over here, which shows that talent well deployed in your organization is it can add a significant amount of value, to the overall mix, right? So figure out where, one of the things you can do as an exercise when you go back is figure out where your best talent is, right? Are they sitting in places which are most critical for the organization, most critical to making impact? If not, is there a place where you can put them where, because if you spread your talent thin, you also wind up, your best talent thin, you also wind up not being able to be focused in specific directions and maximize the parts of your organization which can grow the best and create the most impact. Very interestingly, the same article actually talks about, again, I'm going to share this as post notes. There's a chapter which talks about best performing versus lower performing organizations. You'll find the best performing organizations spend less than 3 hours in meetings every day versus the lowest performing ones spend more than 6 hours. In terms of team members feeling inspired, best performing organizations, more than 50% feel inspired. Lower performing ones, less than 25% feel inspired. Is there a high performance culture? The best performing ones actually have, have significantly, where culture actually drives performance and engagement, while in terms of low performing ones, culture actually does not tend to drive performance and engagement as much. This again is very critical, the last one, which is where the difference makers are placed, right? Like, as we said, putting your talent in the best places is very critical. Best performing ones are very good at doing that. The ones who are the low performing actually lack processes to put difference makers in critical roles. So, there's again, like I said, there's a read, post read on this. I'm also going to share a post read in terms of culture, right? Because this word of what is a high performance culture is a question that people tend to ask. I'm going to share, 7 things that make up good, strong performance culture, right? So that, just watch out for that in your inboxes after the session. Yeah, any questions? Does it make sense? Any reflections also?
There's a question, Tejas, from Revati.
Yeah. So Revati, so Revati, there were 3 things that was brought up, which was time, talent, and energy. In energy, we spoke about the author spoke, the speaker spoke about all people who are inspired versus people who are engaged versus people who are satisfied. And people who are inspired did 125% better than people who are satisfied. Again, these are terms. I'll come back with what does inspired mean, what does engaged mean, and what does satisfied mean. But these were, that's what energy means in this context. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to, continue. So I'm going to talk about, we're going to talk about the, some individual productivity themes as well as some team productivity themes. And then I'm going to take you towards solutions. So when it comes to individual productivity, what do we really need to think about when we think about the productivity of each individual within our organization? There are 6 areas which I found through my research, through working with organizations. The first is really about mindset, right? There are practical ways actually to enhance mindset, right? So how do you actually look at enhancing the mindset of your organization? How do you help each individual adopt a growth mindset? How do you address self-beliefs, right? Some of us have very powerful self-beliefs which can hinder progress, right? Some of us, for example, say we're not very good at numbers. What that does is it makes us believe that that we can never learn numbers, we can never do any financial analysis, and that does impact our growth as we progress, right? So sometimes these beliefs become disempowering, and how do you actually reverse these beliefs and actually take different views and empower yourself more is what what you can think about in mindset. In terms of prioritization, I think that's another thing. How do you help each individual prioritize amongst the many different tasks that they're doing, right? A lot of your employees, a lot of your team members are stuck doing so many different tasks. How do you help them prioritize? How do you help them plan? Which is something which I find very powerful is you can ask your employees to actually do plan their ideal day, right? Like just forget about the day you'd have today with all its constraints and all the challenges. How do you define your ideal day? Because that gives you a great template to move towards, right? You don't have to achieve your ideal day today. but you can move towards doing the things you have to do. Build your ideal day put your ideal productive day in practice. A lot of people keep telling me that they're not feeling productive, but they don't actually have not defined what a productive day looks like for themselves. So I find this exercise very useful, just to sit down, put down hour by hour, what does your day look like. It can be very empowering in terms of even thinking about a productive day. Task management, a lot of us are struggling. A lot of us have about 100 open tasks at any given time. So how do you actually manage those tasks? Very important to think about. As you have so many tasks to manage. Attention. This is becoming the biggest challenge. Right now. How do you actually improve your attention? Because a lot of us are distracted. A lot of us, some of you actually in the survey said, you're distracted because of your mobile phone. You're finding it difficult to work because you're getting interrupted all the time. So how do you actually bring back your attention? That's very, very critical. And we're going to cover some solutions on individual productivity as we go along. But I'm just stating the area. And the last is triggers, which is, we keep getting bombarded with meetings, with emails through the day. How do you actually, how do you tackle those meetings but still find enough time for strategic thinking? Yeah. So these are 6 areas, just wanted to know from you, which of these areas, you can put it in chat, which of these 6 areas resonates most with you. Would love to hear your thoughts. Out of these 6 areas, which of these, you can just put in chat, which one resonates most with you? Yeah, okay. Harsh is saying prioritization. Yep. Mindset. Okay. Planning, prioritization, triggers.
Can I
attention.
say something?
Please.
Wouldn't prioritization planning go hand in hand? Wouldn't it be clubbed together?
Yeah, so it goes. You can club it together. You can keep it separately. Both are valid. In fact, earlier I used to call it prioritization and planning, and then I moved it separately, because to me prioritization is first defining what is important. Suppose you have 10 things. What are the 3 things which are the most important? And that is a separate exercise by itself. And once you define those 3, then how do you plan to get those 3 into action? So that's how I separate the 2. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah, got it. Thanks.
Most. So a lot of you are saying prioritization. That's interesting. Anyone want to share? You can share your challenges, or you can even share some solutions in terms of how you prioritize. A lot of you are busy individuals, who are doing tremendous amount of work. So how do you actually manage to get so much done? So, if anybody wants to talk about their own prioritization process, would love to hear.
Well, I think for me, the challenge comes here is that sometimes I find a lot of tasks with a sense of urgency, and which are not even planned earlier, and they just like pop up from somewhere. Like, for example, sometimes it could be some stakeholders request for some urgent documents, could be administration or funder, and which are not even in the planning space, and it comes as a sense of urgency, and then the prioritization part just got into a bit of trouble.
Yeah, no, and I just want to hear more about that. How often does that happen to you? Is it daily? Is it multiple times a week? Is it
maybe once or twice in a week.
Yeah. So that's interesting, Harsh. I think so at least those 3 days, suppose it happens twice in a week, those 3 days at least, you can have those priorities well defined. And at least it gives you some direction in terms of how to actually move forward, right? Like, what are the things which are the most important? There's something called 3 most important tasks. Some of you may have already come across it. It's called MITs. If not, I'll just explain what it is, which is essentially, what are the 3 most critical things you would do in the week, imagining if you had to go, on vacation at the end of the week, right? That can be a really powerful way to think about, what are the 3 things which are really critical to you. So often we don't really decide what are the most critical. So we wind up working on whatever comes into our mind at that point, right? Which can be confusing. And as a result, when you actually get something that pops up, because you've not really defined in advance what's priority, urgent always seems it's more important, you know. But if you had defined that these three are so critical that I must get it done, you may find you delay that, you know, responding to those urgent requests for documents. You may say, hey, give me half an hour, 1 hour, let me finish my deep work and get back to you. And over time, people start to respect, you know, and find and you know, appreciate the fact that, you know, you're taking a little bit of time. But I think the first part becomes about really setting your priorities properly. And the second part, you know, becomes about, okay, now comparing what's coming into those priorities which you've defined. Would that work for you, Harsh?
Well, sounds good. We'll try.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, none of this is, you know, going to be easy to implement. But I think just I think just think of it this way, you know, Harsh, can you delay your response instead of replying right away? Can you wait for, you know, finish the piece of work that you're doing and reply in half an hour, you know? Often our instinct tells us to reply right away instead of, you know, waiting half an hour, finishing what we have to get done, because it takes about 15 minutes to reach peak focus. So every time you get interrupted, it takes again 15 minutes to reach that peak focus, you know? So there's a cost involved every time we accept a, you know, an ad hoc request. But happy to, you know, hear how it goes for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
You know,
Thanks,
Tejas,
yes, sir.
I think we also need to understand at what level or position or role we are working on. When we look at the wheel of, you know, diving deeper into prioritization, planning, task management, etc. For example, I have put on the chat that for me, the three things which would be challenges and affect me, depending, of course, as you grow through the roles, is mindset, trigger, and attention. Because when you work in leadership positions at the top level and in the board, these are intangibles, you see, and these connect with energy, right? Because when the board meetings take place, it's not much about prioritization or planning, because there is an execution team to take care of that, right?
Absolutely.
But if you're a project manager, right, handling a multi-billion-dollar project, right, or maybe a merger or acquisition, then the combination of factors would, you know, come in. That there's a prioritization, then there is a task management, then there are triggers that take place. So then the complexity increases depending on the nature of the project that you're handling.
Interesting. Well, that's a great point, Santosh. So are you saying in some cases the intangible can be more challenging than the tangible, let's say the prioritization aspects, right? Is that what you're saying? Or
yeah, because at the board level, you see, when we are looking at valuation and, you know, P ratios and looking at financial indicators, that's the external influences. Then internally is how exactly you get to those targets, and, you know, what is the push and pull effect which is there. So, you know, that's why I said triggers, you know. So what is the trigger that works into making you more? Well, at the top level, you are involved in decision making, right? So how do you connect? The question I have is, how will you connect decision making with productivity? So decision making stimulates productivity because people come to you for decisions and approvals. Delayed decisions affects talented people, and they quit the organization because they say, this is not the place I want to work. I mean, I want things, you know, moving faster, the momentum, the inertia, etc.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting point, you know, Santosh. I think it finally, you know, I think everybody has, you know, this similar challenges, but at different levels and different like parameters, like you said. So I think the question becomes, how do you, decision making becomes your task, you know, as maybe the task of somebody would be to create the content that's required for decision making. So how do you do your task in the best possible way? How do you look at what are the inputs you need to make that decision in a way that's quick and efficient becomes, you know, the question, if that makes sense. Okay, Santosh, was that helpful? Very interesting perspectives.
Yeah. Thank you, Tejas, for this. Thank you.
Okay. Just moving. We're just in the interest of time, just going to move a little faster because I want to really take you all to the solutions which we have for today. So, you know, diving deeper into team productivity, since we spoke about, individual productivity, what are the things you really should think about when it comes to team productivity? You know, one is thinking about direction. I think a lot of times, you know, it may seem like we take it for granted that we know, that we know how the team is going, what the goals are. But often, if you ask, different team members what the team purposes, what the team goals are, you may get different answers. In fact, I remember I did a workshop very recently where I asked people, what work do you do? What are the types of work you do? And there was no consensus in the organization. This was a large nonprofit, in fact, but there was no consensus, in terms of what are the pieces of work that they do. Right? So I think direction can be very, very critical. Having that sense of understanding of where is the organization going. That means where is my team going? That means what are my team's priorities and the work we do. Having that linkage between the impact you're trying to make at the highest level to what your team does is very critical, particularly when we look at inspiring employees, which was one of the points that someone had brought up earlier. Delegation is so critical. A lot of your organizations are having individual, contributors who are becoming managers. So how do you really empower them to, become better delegators? A lot of us don't see delegation as a skill. We think that, if they're strong, they'll be able to delegate well and be good managers. But often you'll find suddenly that great individual contributors are struggling to delegate, because really, delegation is a skill that needs to be taught. Some people just naturally understand it better. Some people take a little longer. But looking at it as a skill that can be taught can really ease the process for your individual contributors who are becoming managers. Managing upwards is so critical. I think, it's very, very critical to see, how do I manage my boss better, right? Like, it's good for your relationship between the two of you, but also for the organization to move forward. That alignment is critical. There may not be agreement, but there may be alignment. In the sense of a healthy conversation, healthy debates that help you really move the organization forward. And in this, there's a very interesting exercise which I highly recommend, which is just looking at understanding the working styles of your managers, right? Just ask yourself, okay, what is the working style of my manager, right? Do they like detailed notes? Do they like high level? Do they like written? Do they like verbal? Do they like a debrief right after a event or a session happens? Or do they want me to come back, put my thoughts together and send them something more structured? Just having a good sense of how to, your manager style will save you a lot of effort and time spent in actually, learning the hard way, right? So you can even take that understanding to your manager and say, hey, this is what I understand is your style. I know it's not a hard and fast rule, but by and large, is this the way you work? You can even, speak to your manager if you find that they are going to be open to say, hey, is this your working style? So that you actually are able to align as early as possible with them. Then there's high performance culture. How do you really build processes and systems, but also stay agile? Is something that you can think about, because a lot of organizations, because of the amount of work that NGOs are doing, you'll find that it's becoming difficult and more challenging to build processes. But without processes, you will also find that you can't scale as fast as you'd like. You can't onboard people as fast as you'd like. So how do you balance process and agility is something to think about. Meetings, a lot of us are spending significant amount of time in meetings, particularly as you go up the chain in terms of leadership positions. How do you actually, really optimize meetings, both in terms of the amount of time you spend and the way you spend those meetings is critical. And the last is collaboration. How do you brainstorm in a truly collaborative way becomes a very critical element. So I'll just pause here, just would love to hear again, maybe you can put it in chat. What, again, out of these 6 themes, which one do you think, you resonates most given your own teams in the organizations that you work in? So the question is, which of these 6 themes do you feel would be most relevant to the organization? Okay, so Chaya is saying direction, Muralidhar is saying direction and delegation. Do either of you want to just say a little bit on that? Maybe just one of you, and then we'll move on to the one or two of you, and then we can move on. Chaya, do you want to share, or Muralidhar?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Tej. So the direction for me, because I have experiences in the past also, when you do not get a correct direction of what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to do, and sometimes your line managers are expecting something else from you. And when they do not direct you what we are expecting and you are just doing your task. So the ultimate goal was to deliver something, right? As an NGO. Or maybe you are having one project which you want to do deliver something and you're not delivering. And at the end, when you're having a starting discussion, why this didn't go like this. So it means if you have guided or directed correctly in the past, the deliverable would be a more fruitful, I think. So this is what I have felt more lacking.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting, right? I think a lot of times we're told just do it, right? Like we're told, like, this is a task, can you get it done? But without any context, without any thinking, without any, larger picture, and then we expect them to magically, come up with the right
And
right
sometimes
output.
line managers think that we have all the capacity, we have all the understanding what they are thinking or what they are expecting from us. So.
No, absolutely. I think it's so critical, Chaya. I think folks, that's such a critical element that you don't need your reportees to know everything that you know, but you need them to clearly understand the context in which you're asking them to do work, because often you'll find without that, that they will be you'll be reducing the entire thing to just tasks versus empowering them to think beyond those specific tasks. One more person?
And at the last time, means at the last, it will reduce your time of discussion, right? And you are again going back what we were supposed to deliver. So it's better to direct at the starting.
No, that's so critical. In fact, there's something which I call a delegation note, which I find useful, for people who are delegating, which is instead of just saying, giving a lot of us, we pick up the call, we do a 30-second brief, and we say, okay, can you get it done? But versus if you create a delegation note, which is a very detailed capture of your thoughts, you just spend 10-15 minutes putting it together, you can save a lot of time in the process and a lot of effort as well later in terms of course correcting. Yeah. Does that resonate with how you think?
Can we add transparency?
Can you expand a little bit on that?
See, what happens is I have seen in organizations, both internally as an advisor, everything is a perfect picture. I mean, systems, processes, ERP, technology. I mean, you name it, you go in and let's say, I mean, these guys are great to get the Malcolm Baldrige Award. But at the end of the day, when you deep dive into creating a survey to look at internal alignment inside the organization, I'm talking of the alignment diagnostics, right? Internally, strategy connecting, etc. The common note, that red flag that comes up is transparency. So you have delegation, but it's not transparent. You are managing up, but there's no transparency. And you see that there is a conflict between people and teams. And today, I think since organizations are moving from profit to purpose and values, right? Profit to purpose and values, transparency is key because transparency creates trust.
No, absolutely. It's so valid, Santosh. I think we can't be in this sector without trust, I think trust is such an important
NGO, especially in an NGO where money is not returnable, right? The transparency and trust are very, very critical into the whole, what you call package of things that systems and processes.
Absolutely. I think it's such a valid point. I think it's transparency all around, right? Like from non-profits, from funders, from partners, all around transparency can add a lot of value to the entire ecosystem, because often, that can be a challenge from multiple stakeholder angles. But I fully agree. I think it's a great point to add in.
Thank you. Thank you, Tejas.
Perfect. Okay. I'm going to move to, steps that you can take within the organization. So now we've spoken about all these, areas. I'm going to take some steps in terms of how do you solve the productivity challenges. So one is I'm going to share a survey format, which you can use, you can just copy that Google form and use it in your own organization and run it within your own organization. So I'll share that outside, after the session is over. But the first step is just ask your employees first, right? I rarely see surveys which cover productivity problems. We cover, how inspired you feel, how motivated you feel. Do you feel, your manager has been, fair with you? Do you feel, a lot of questions which are people related, But for some reason, I don't find a lot of questions on productivity. Do you face challenges, for example, in focus? Do you face challenges in prioritization, planning? All those things don't get asked, but those are so critical to getting work done. So I will actually share a survey format that you can use within your own organization. You can even, after those surveys, run focus group to say, hey, what really is the problem? And then do one-on-one conversations with specific stakeholders, right? So the first thing is just to ask people to begin with, right? A lot of times we just assume and we start making, we start putting solutions without even really talking to people. The second is to isolate the root cause, right? Now, a lot of times, I've seen people say, hey, like we have too many meetings, let's introduce no meetings Friday, right? The problem is the root, the symptom is that you have too many meetings. By reducing the amount of time available for meetings, people will just put more meetings between Monday to Wednesday, right? So often the Monday to Thursday, right? So even if you introduce a Friday, no meetings, then you'll just find Monday to Thursday has more meetings very often, right? So ironically, you'll make your other days much more packed if you do that. In which case, the first question becomes, okay, what really is leading to so many meetings? Is it not being clear on priorities, so we're trying to do too much? Is it that we are clear on priorities, but we haven't put the right people in the right place, etc., right? So really isolating what are the root cause is very critical before you even come to the stage of solutions. Then you kind of prioritize, okay, which are the areas of highest criticality, because you will find that once you prioritize, there are multiple things you can do, right? But you can't launch all of those solutions, all at the same time. So what are the real areas, that you really think is going to add the most value, right? So for example, maybe I realize that, people are spending too much time in meetings, but I find that maybe if I, have better, clearer priorities which are communicated, which goes to the point of direction, which all of you are raising, then maybe that's what I should think about first, right? So now I have direction as to what my solution is, and then the solution is just easier then, right? Solution then becomes, okay, I'll set up a system, or I'll have an internal, external training, or I'll set up meetings to really discuss, okay, what is the direction that is, that's required. I'll document, okay, these are the goals and things like that, so that people are clear. These are the priorities which have been defined, so that everybody's clear, right? So I've closed the loop on, on the problem itself, right? So yeah, does it make sense? Just give me a thumbs up if this is making sense. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Okay, thank you, folks. Okay, so we're going to come up with some individual productivity solutions. So this is based on work that I've done with multiple NGOs. As well as for-profit organizations. So I'm going to leave you all with 3 recommendations in individual productivity and 3 recommendations in team productivity. The first is building a deep work office. So any thoughts about how you can build a deep work office, an office that really prioritizes getting focused deep work done? Any thoughts? You can even put it in the chat. Okay. So I'm just going to continue. Some of you may be thinking through it. So building a deep work office, there are these few elements. One is creating a focus block, reducing the number of meetings, absolutely. So we'll talk about that. Focus blocks in calendars. I think, if you're not already putting focus blocks in calendars, you should, put those focus blocks in your calendars. Now the question I get is, but I put focus blocks in calendars, but a lot of people block over it, right? I think it's very, very critical to have a conversation as a team, right? To say, hey, let's have focus blocks defined, and let's have some rules around, what it means when you have a focus block. How do you actually put a reasonable amount of focus blocks so you can get deep work done, but also it doesn't become such that people can't access your calendar, can't set up time with you, right? So putting focus block is one idea. Having a dedicated area for focused work can be tremendously useful. So can you create a small space in your office where people go there and they get deep work done, right? It can be tremendously helpful. You can have deep work Mondays. A lot of people start Mondays with a lot of anxiety because, you've just trying to warm up with, your week. So you can even have a deep work Monday where you don't have meetings, or you, let's say, block out the first half and don't have meetings on the first half. So you can have certain thematic days. It can be a Monday, it can be a Friday, it doesn't matter what day. But, that's another way. Skill training for focus. I think focus is something that can actually be trained. There is a technique, which is out there called Pomodoro. So, which you can Google. It's a great, very useful technique, which some of you may have even tried for focus work. And then deep work tracking is another way you can, build a deep work focus routine, which is, ask people to really track how much time they're spending in deep work. You will often find a lot of insight if you just track your time, right? How many of you are really tracking your time? Just give me a thumbs up if any of you are tracking your time. Okay. Yeah. So one or two of you may be tracking your time right now. If anybody wants to share also how they track their time, please do. Maybe just put it in. You can put it in the chat as well. But yeah, tracking your time will tell you tremendous, because like you've heard, you can't improve what you don't measure, right? So no, like I track my day. It's just the only way I can tell whether I've had a success, productive week is sometimes by just looking at how I've really been spending my time. Right? So if you're not tracking your time, just track it. It's very simple. You can put in Excel, just capturing how much time you're spending hour by hour, minute by minute, or you can do it on a piece of paper. It doesn't matter. But either way, it just helps sometimes. Yeah. Vikas, you had a question. You're saying try to track time, but not able to achieve time. Right?
Yes. Like sometimes we put the timings to track the complete the task, but sometimes due to some technical issues or something, we are not able to complete our task, and that gets irritated to our we are not able to complete our task in the timeline. So that's it's difficult.
Yeah, no, and that's happened sometimes, because sometimes no matter what you do, what you may learn from that, because suppose I said, okay, this took me 5 hours, but I thought it'll take me 2 hours. That itself is a learning, right? So then hey, maybe I'm taking more time than I thought, right? Or maybe you got interrupted way more than you thought. So you said, okay, maybe I thought I had 5 hours in the week, but actually I had only 3 hours in the week. So either way, when you track, the most important thing after you track is also then to improve the way you plan and track time as well. So it's like almost an iterative process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so then the second thing with individual priority is, how do you becoming a highly priority focused organization? So I think this is something that all of you really spoke about a lot, right? This comes back to the point on overwhelm that a lot of you spoke about. If we try to do 10 things, we spread ourselves too thin. It's very difficult to be productive over a long period, right? You can, in the short term, you can maybe do a lot of stuff, but sooner than later, the ball starts to drop, right? So how do you build a highly prioritized organization? One, having a list of weekly priorities which are mapped to quarterly goals. A lot of you may have annual goals, but do you have quarterly goals that can add a lot of value? If you do, map out highest priority tasks for each role, right? If for each of your roles, right, within your teams, can you map out what are the 2-3 tasks which are most critical, right? If you're a fundraiser, for example, the most critical things may be, reaching out to new prospects, spending on time on drafting, creating proposals, etc. Right? So you may have 2-3 tasks which are very critical for you. Mapping those out become critical so that you can actually then see am I really spending time, which comes to the next point of tracking time, right, on those high priority tasks. Exception handling is very critical. So what do you do when non-priority tasks arise, right? Having a conversation within your team about what to do can be, to how to manage these ad hoc tasks can be very useful, because often it leads to burnout when you're actually having to do too many different things without it really being priority, right? So what do you do when a non-priority task comes up, right? Having some conversation around that is helpful. In the end, clear priorities lead to more depth and expertise, which leads to greater processes, which leads to more scalability, right? If you have clear priorities, you can go deeper in those few priorities. If you get more depth and expertise, they're more amenable to making processes. If you have processes, you can scale them, right? So it's as simple as that. And as we all know, most of us know the 80-20 rule, which is 20% of our work leads to 80% of our impact, right? So you can think about what are those 20% of areas which is going to add to lead to the most amount of impact when you actually set those priorities, right? The last thing in individual priority is enabling more positive mindsets, right? We said energy we saw it was critical. In that, we said, can you have more informal activities and bonds, particularly in the age of remote working, right? Like a lot of us are finding it very difficult to feel connected to the organization because we have so many of our team members are actually sitting in different places. So can you have more informal activity? It doesn't have to be in person, can be even online. A lot of meetings are otherwise very cut to cut, just meeting for the purpose of work and you go away. But can you have informal meetings? Can you enable people to share anonymous feedback? A lot of people feel like they're not being heard. So can they give feedback? Can they give ideas? Can you have idea competition so that the best ideas actually come forward? I find that a lot of great ideas come from people sometimes who have just joined you because they see things with a fresh perspective. But often instead of those ideas coming to light, they become integrated into the organization. Those ideas disappear as well. So how do you create those internal competitions? Company awards, team awards are there, but how do you actually create recognition beyond those awards, which are, you can create blog posts of people, you can share personal stories. It can go a long way in terms of building morale and positive energy. So these are some solutions on, individual productivity. I will just end with a few high impact solutions on team productivity, and would love to hear, any questions after that. So in team productivity, the first area I highly recommend is optimizing meetings. So how do you optimize meetings? Time equals cost, right? Like if you're spending 6 hours of your day in meeting, that's also a high cost, right? Which is going towards meetings. So I highly recommended, meetings policy document, right? We have expense policy documents, but do we have a real meetings policy document that talks about, hey, how do we want to run meetings in our organization, right? Because it's a significant amount of time that's going in meetings, right? So what are the right ways to run meetings is very critical. Cap the time spent in meetings in a day, right? What is the maximum you want to be spending in meetings in a day? I found the right number is 5 hours, but you can say, suppose it's even 6 hours for you, or let's say 4 hours, right? Either way, having a defined end, cap in terms of the, in terms of the amount of time you spend in meetings can really help you, because after a certain point, you'll find it very difficult to get work done. Run better quality meetings. There are ways to do that in terms of, running better quality meetings. The most important thing is, if you have, if you have a meeting of 4 or more people and there's no agenda, I often say, you should decline that meeting, right? Because 4 people coming together is significant organizational cost, right? So if you don't have an agenda for that, it's not going to be a very productive meeting. 40-20-40 rule, which I found very interesting for larger meetings, is you can spend 40% of your time before the meeting preparing, 20% is the actual execution of the meeting, and 40% is the follow-ups, that are required. Often it's 0, 100, 0, right? We spend, or 10, 80, 10, which is we spend a little bit of time before planning. We spend most of our time in the meeting and we spend a little bit after in follow-up. But at the follow-up and the planning is, as you can see, contributing to a significant amount of success of that meeting, right? Again, you don't have to do this for all meetings, but for the major ones, the ones which you do, which are large organizational ones or with key stakeholders, it can be important. Enhancing collaboration, and having meeting-free slots is the last one, right? Can be very helpful. Enhancing collaboration, there's something called brain writing, which I highly recommend, which is, having a way for people to actually submit their ideas before they actually share them. So it can be on a Google form, it can be, it can be written and earlier in advance in some kind of document and then shared. But when people share, write down their ideas before, they don't get biased by other ideas, and that generates 41% more, innovation, right? So brain writing is very powerful. Another way to enhance collaboration is to set joint targets for sales or delivery, or in our case, fundraising, or, let's say project, program teams. So can you have joint targets for them so that there's more meaningful collaboration, right? A lot of collaboration is, a lot of us want to collaborate, but it has to be meaningful. It has to make sense for why these two teams should collaborate. So with not having joint targets, not having joint goals, is a miss if you really want true collaboration to take place. Creating bid roles is very important. Can you create roles where people, have people who understand other teams, like suppose you're working, like on curriculum building and content building, and content delivery. Can you have teams that understand a little bit of each other, the way, each of the teams work, so that you'll be able to build these bridge roles within the team. And the last in team collaboration, pre-team productivity is interestingly something that you all brought up, which is driving direction, which is essentially, about aligning on first principles. Why does the organization exist? What we're trying to do, our business lines, or in this case, our program initiatives, clear goals, and defining a no criteria. What are we really going to say no to, right? I think a lot of organizations don't have a definite list of things that they say no to, which means we wind up saying yes to a lot of things that come our way. So having a no criteria is very useful. Balancing process with flexibility is also critical, and focusing more on the what and less on the how, right? Giving people the direction, giving people what needs to be achieved, but as much as possible, stepping away from how they do it is going to be useful. Sorry, I had to run through a little bit, just in the interest of time. Just want to hear out of these three, which is optimizing meetings, enhancing collaboration, and driving direction, which of these would be most useful in your context. You can put that in the chat. Santosh, you want to share a little bit about what, this is interesting. DDI, I was just reading it. Enhancing collaboration. Yeah.
Yeah, Tejas, yeah, sorry. So it's typically short summary, 3 lines is, you call anyone in a company or organization, the first thing is saying, busy in a meeting. So there's no start time, there's no end time. And then you ask the next question. So when will the person be free? Next 2-word monosyllable answer. Can't say.
No, that's so true. Yeah. So you're saying set agenda.
This is a fact in the Indian context, sorry to say, because I worked abroad.
Yeah.
It's a very, very different culture on the elasticity of time. So with most organizations, including at board level, I say DDI technique. The DDI technique is the best. Why do people come up to you for this? They come to you for decisions, because decision is the most important thing which will drive performance and further productivity, etc. So agenda item should be classified A, decision 1, 2, 3, time allocation for each of these items.
Interesting. No, that's such a great point.
Because the people who come to me in the leadership decision-making capacity should come with the priorities. It's not me to decide. So you come and say, point number 1, this decision, 5 minutes I require. This one I require. Because, there are so many people attending the meeting and everybody. So you consolidate the decision priority. Then there is a discussion, because there is a discussion on situational analysis, problem solving, etc., which will then require a decision. So the discussion will get pushed into decision. And then at the end of the day is the last cup of coffee which you have, where there's information sharing going on. So what's happening? So what's on the horizon? So it is basically a scanning exercise. So what's happening? Okay, so it's a regional managers conference sales, let us say. So what's happening in the Western region? Okay, what's happening in the Southern region? So it's only information. That information will then push to discussion and then push to decision. So this cycle has to move very fast.
Interesting. No, this is great, Santosh. We'll include this in our notes. Thank you so much for including this.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Great. So that is we've reached the end. Thank you to Atma again for inviting me. If you want to get in touch, this is my email address. You can even scan this QR code in case you want to follow me on LinkedIn, where I'll keep posting about the work Equist does from time to time. Any questions? I know we're on time, but if any of you want to stay back and ask questions, please do. But thank you so much to all of you for joining, and thank you to the Atma team here.
I don't have a question, but I would like to really appreciate, the time you have taken, and the presentation is so focused and precise. And, productivity, unfortunately, is not made into a very focused subject, right? So some people discuss productivity like happiness and success.
I have a question. Can you answer?
Please.
So thank you so much, Tejas.
Thank you, San. Thank you so much, Santosh. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the inputs as well.
Yeah.
So, Tejas, the thing is, I seem to understand these things, and I've been reading up also. How to go about doing this is, so we should start at the survey level, I think,
exactly.
like assessing where we are right now. Would that be a starting point?
Exactly. If you follow the 4 steps, Revati, which is you really see, okay, you ask people, get them to really open up, get them to do discussions, and you can ask them multiple things, right? So you can ask them across, and you see the survey, it's quite a detailed one in terms of different areas. Once you isolate and you prioritize, when you understand the root cause and you prioritize which areas to do, the solution becomes almost obvious, is what I find. But the first 2-3 steps are the hardest.
And the other thing is, are there certain kinds of, like in our organization, the biggest problem comes, there are always the unknown, like the trigger or whatever, the intrusions, no? Those happen actually. It is not like people are choosing phone calls or Instagram or anything. It's just that too many things keep coming up, and we have a plan for the week, for the day, for the month. But when suddenly things come up, and there's like a fair amount of troubleshooting that happens. So then everything collapses.
Yeah. So, like Revati, I find that personally, what I've seen is it does happen, we do wind up getting distracted, but you'll find that at least the days you're not having those kind of moments, or the moments in the day when you don't have that, you can, if you have systems in place, if you have, a proper understanding of what your prioritization is, you'll find that you automatically say no more than you did earlier. So it's something we'll have to actually have a deeper conversation with. A little hard to, it'll require maybe a deeper conversation, to be honest.
Thank you very much. It was very, very useful for me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everything. Great. Vaishali, I think back to you. So, sorry, I took 4 minutes over time.
No, that's completely fine. And if it's okay with everyone, we can stay on for like 5 more minutes. Absolutely no problem. Please do ask your questions. As always, we had a very, very interactive audience. So grateful. Just want to check कि अगर किसी को कोई भी सवाल है, कुछ भी अगर और थॉट शेयर करने हैं या कोई क्लैरिफिकेशन की ज़रूरत है, तो आप प्लीज़ अभी अनम्यूट करके भी बात कर सकते हैं, चैट बॉक्स का भी इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं। और yes, we'll meet again in the next webinar, but I'm going to let this go on for about 5 more minutes if anyone else wants to add something.